Next, we're going to talk about the structure of assembly and procurement in agribusinesses in the agricultural industry. What is assembly and procurement? Assembly is basically the act of acquiring all of your inputs. Procurement, more or less, is the act of actually buying these goods. So assembly and procurement go hand in hand. It's more or less just the act of acquiring those goods and actually paying for them. And one thing that we must note is that food processors often do their own assembly and procurement in-house. They often buy or often hire specialized assemblers to actually go out and acquire these goods for them. So think about it this way. You've got a beef packing plant that has specialized cattle assemblers, live cattle assemblers. Those live cattle procurement buyers, assemblers, will go out there and buy cattle from feedlots in the area. And they are specialized in that task, and they do this in-house in this food processing business. Another thing we must note is that across the whole United States, there might be a lot of commodity buyers. There might be a lot of buyers across the whole United States of agricultural goods. And it appears that there are many assemblers, many firms buying from farmers. While this appears to be true, we must kind of break it down to a regional level, a geographical level. And what we find is that on an area by area basis, this may not always be the case. You see, what happens is transportation, product deterioration, and shrink often limit choices for the farmers of who they can sell to, because there might be only one buyer in an area, and it might be too cost inhibitive to transport your goods to the next buyer down the road. And the second buyer, the second closest buyer, may be too far away, and it may cost too much in transportation, or it may cost too much in product deterioration, such as milk. Raw milk is a good that spoils very easily. It's a very perishable commodity. So you really, because of the product deterioration, you really can't travel very far to sell that good. Meaning that there might be only one buyer in the area that you can sell to because that's the only one close enough. Or you might face shrink. In live animals, you often have the issue of shrink if they travel too far. So what we find out is there might actually be only a few assemblers competing in one specific area. There might actually only be one assembler in one area. So while it appears that there are many firms, on a geographical area by area basis, there might only be one or two firms competing in that area. Another thing that we must talk about is price competition. See, price competition varies based on the area and the type of products that were being sold. So an example of that would be, say you're in one area right now that has one cattle buyer. And there might be a lot of cattle, but there's only one cattle buyer. Well, what happens if another cattle buyer comes in here and charges 10 cents or is paying 10 cents more per pound or 10 cents more per hundredweight for that cattle in that area? Well, now that actually increases price competition. And what we found is that price competition varies from area to area on agricultural commodities, as well as it varies from product to product, depending on what is the demand and everything else that goes into this. Another thing, whenever we're talking about price competition, is that areas of high concentrations of agricultural commodities often have higher competition among assemblers, which means that these assemblers must compete among a lot more alternative input sources, must compete across a lot of different sources, and it winds up creating more price competition. More price competition generally drives prices up. So in an area of, say, the Corn Belt, you typically would see corn prices a little bit higher than somewhere maybe along the East Coast because of various reasons, but a lot of the reason is high concentration drives up high competition among assemblers, often driving up prices. So meaning an area with a large amount of concentration typically has a lot higher prices than one with low amounts of concentration.